Welcome to the United Church of Strafford, Vermont, on this fourth Sunday in Lent and Struggle Sunday. Um, a year ago last night, Anamika and Jeremiah gave a concert in the sanctuary with blue tape blocking every other pew. The church council met after the concert to discuss how we would respond to the growing pandemic. It was the first meeting where we included people by video, but it was because of road conditions, not because of COVID. I came into the meeting really wanting the church to keep open, to keep gathering, because I felt that people would really need it in a hard time. Bill Burden was with us by phone, and when his turn came, he said he had studied pandemics, especially the 1918 flu, and that the only way to beat COVID would be to shut things down and stay apart. And that was all I needed to hear. The council still felt hopeful that the danger would be over by Easter 3 weeks later, but we took the precaution of saying we would not gather for a whole month. Well, we will not be gathering this Easter either. But as Deidre said last Sunday, we will be celebrating it with new hope and real hope. Today, we pass the halfway point in the Lenten wilderness. The gospel readings are now coming from the last week of Jesus' life as tensions with the authorities increase and the cross draws near. The themes of Lent's remaining 3 Sundays are struggle, truth, and oneness. And looking back, those are themes of this pandemic year as well, if you think about it: struggle, truth, and oneness. So today we celebrate the struggle as we worship together. So Swahili wisdom says life has meaning only in the struggle. Victory and defeat are in the hands of the gods. So we might as well celebrate the struggle. Life is not all struggle, but there will always be some until we reach the promised land of God's realm on earth, until compassion, justice, and freedom are extended to all, until we live in harmony with our planet, until we have attained the spirit-filled heart and mind of Christ and experienced our oneness with God and the universe, and until we are fully evolved. Until then, we will need to struggle in those directions. And those struggles will be among the most meaningful moments of our lives. The co-founder of Centering Prayer, Thomas Keating, loved the metaphor of the butterfly struggling to get out of its cocoon as an archetype of human transformation. If a sympathetic person comes along and helps pull the butterfly free, it will be disastrous. The butterfly needs the struggle to strengthen its wings, or it will never fly. Keating was a brilliant teacher of the spiritual journey, combining ancient Christian tradition and the wisdom of other faiths and modern psychological insights. He was just the spiritual teacher that we needed to come along in this moment of history, because we will not escape the dangerous wilderness that humanity has created if we do not complete the journey that Jesus and Paul and the Buddha and other traditions have called us to take. Struggle comes on those paths as both a mysterious fact of life and a miraculous gift of grace. Keating taught that in the Christian tradition, the spiritual journey travels in spirals up a mountain. We climb to our first spiritual awareness and we find ourselves on a blissful plateau. But if we continue from there, we come to an overlook where we see our materialistic, selfish lives in painful contrast to the ideal of Christ like love that we aspire to reach. And if we keep going, we enter a hard stretch of the journey, a process called traditionally purgation, a purging, purgation, or dark night of the sense or spirit or soul, or kenosis, a word you hear me use often, where we empty ourselves of that selfish self, not knowing what will take its place. As Keating said, surrender to the unknown marks the great transitions of the spiritual journey. On the brink of each new breakthrough, there is a crisis of trust and love. So we struggle through that crisis of letting go, that great letting go, to reach the higher plateau of illumination. Traditionally, it's called illumination. It's where we are more completely and purely filled with the love and light of God, living more spirit-filled, creative lives, because we've made room for that by getting rid of our old self or clearing it out. And as we climb from there, we are likely to come to other struggles of purgation, dark night, and kenosis, until we emerge at last above the tree line and experience universal oneness and fill with unconditional compassion and love. The churches most of us grew up in never talked about this spiritual journey. Jesus fervently prayed that we would take it, but the Western church abandoned it and made Christianity all about believing dogma and obeying rules so that we would get into heaven. That was a fatal mistake. Thomas Keating was the abbot of St. Joseph's Trappist Monastery in Spencer, Massachusetts in the 1970s, when young Christians from Boston began knocking on their door, trying to find the Buddhist Insight Meditation Center just up the road in Barre, Mass. Keating asked these sojourners why they were turning away from the church. And they said they were looking for a spiritual path. The St. Joseph's monks really struggled with this. They were distressed that Christianity was losing spiritual seekers when it had exactly what they were looking for at the heart of its tradition, but hidden. A butterfly was born of their struggle. The inspiration to translate the Christian contemplative tradition into the contemporary form of centering prayer. That's when centering prayer was born. And then Keating began his life work of translating the hidden tradition into a brilliant, accessible set of modern teachings left to us after his death in videos and in books. The result is that the spiritual journey and the ancient contemplative path are being followed by more people than ever before, ever, transforming consciousness and transforming the world in just the ways we need right now. The next 3 Sundays of Lent each look at a key component of that spiritual journey: struggle, truth, and union, oneness. The scriptures today were about 2 different dimensions of the spiritual struggle. The inner dimension is described by Richard Rohr when he says, it is in the struggle with our shadow self, with failure, or with wounding, that we break into higher levels of consciousness. The outer dimension is described by Frederick Douglass, who said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. These two dimensions of struggle are inextricably bound. We will not have racial, economic, and environmental justice until more of humanity has attained the consciousness of oneness. And we will not advance on that inner journey unless we are ever widening our understanding of who the neighbor is we are called to love. So let us celebrate the struggle. Let us thank and praise those who engage in it, as Jesus and Paul did, for the sake of love. A few weeks ago, Kate Rymanus came to church in her bed after having an emergency appendectomy. She opened our hearts with her courageous intimacy and made us laugh at the story of her ordeal. And we celebrated with her the struggle. She said afterwards how grateful she was for others who had shared their struggles before her. They made her trust in our oneness enough to share hers. I am so moved by the struggles that each of you undergo. Struggles with loss and grief, with illness and aging, struggles with an unjust, unkind world, or struggles with the spiritual journey. Lent begs us to accept the wisdom that this kind of struggle gives life meaning. It is heroic. It is liberating. It brings goodness of life. It is the door that opens to transformation. Your struggles are gifts to us all. So let us open our hearts to the Spirit that led Jesus into the wilderness and then out again as a powerful force of light and life and love. Let us pray in silence, inviting that Spirit to lead us through the struggles that we face. Let us pray. Amen.